Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Weebs Rise Up podcast.
Yay!
Woo! This week we're joined, me and Kamui. We have a special guest this week, Apollomcnugget, a friend and anime enthusiast much like ourselves, who is joining us to talk about some good old anime topics with us. How's it going,
Before we
Apollo?
Okay, what is up?
before we get into a little more about Apollo McNugget, we have a few anime news that we'd like to let everyone know about. So you first, Andy.
All right, we're going to cover a few topics. So, one big piece of news that came out a few days ago, which is some really good news, is that the recent Kyoto animation fire disaster that happened, all of the funds that are going towards the disaster relief of that effort are going to be considered, they're going to be considered as disaster relief funds instead of revenue. So that means the money going into recovering and helping the families who were impacted by the fire recover, those are actually going to be treated as disaster relief funds and aren't going to be taxed like they previously would have been. And that's going to help out a lot of people really a whole lot, you know. That's amazing cuz you wouldn't want to immediately have to lose a lot of that money that was helping out your family if you were in that situation. The fire was extremely devastating and took a large toll on a lot of people. So this is some really good news.
Yep. And another thing is that I don't know if you guys heard of Birthday Wonderland movie, but it's my favorite artist. Ilya Kushinov. He actually is like the character artist for the movie, and it's actually premiering at Crunchyroll Expo. That's happening this weekend in like San Diego, right? Um,
Yep.
so if anyone's in close to San Diego or is going, tell me how it is, and then because I can't see it. And then another thing I did not know about is actually the live action Cowboy Bebop Netflix series. I don't know if you guys knew about it, but
Yeah, I've heard that they were doing a live action.
yeah, so whoa, what's that one guy's name that I can't think of?
Yeah, they
The
they
actor.
they recently announced the lineup for
On show.
who's being
Mhm.
casted for the series.
Yes. John Cho is Spike Spiegel, which is pretty cool. So it seems like a pretty diverse cast too, so it'll be interesting to what they make of it. I didn't personally see Cowboy Bebop, but Paul McNugget here has, so he can he can probably give a
Not
good
all of it.
review on that. Really?
Yeah,
Yeah, you know,
parts of
to be honest, for me, live action remakes of anime movies are usually not the biggest hit when especially when they're done by Netflix. But if there's any series that I think would be a good target series to do, because Cowboy Bebop was such like a Western anime, anyways, this might be a good one for them to capitalize. So I think should like the movie remakes for Ghost in the Shell and like Death Note were big misses, but yeah, there's a lot of opportunity here with this one, I think. And with the cast they've got, like Kamui says, she can vouch for these actors and actresses, so it ought to be a good one.
Yay.
In other news from this past week, um, anime YouTuber Giga put out a pretty big YouTube video this past week covering Demon Slayer, an anime that all three of us on the screen right here are watching. Kimetsu no Yaiba. He put out an anime. He went into the discussion of like why he thinks it's a work of art and talked about how it's different from other shonen and what makes it stand out. Um, Especially, he wanted to release it after highlighting episode 19, the recent big episode that had some pretty big moments and just an epic setup to it, and there was a whole lot of art and design, and that they put a whole lot of effort into that episode. So that was an episode we recently watched too, and that was just high quality content. What did you guys think? I know each of you. Apollo, were you able to watch the Giga video recently?
yeah, I saw it. It was
What
good.
what were your thoughts? What were your thoughts on the recent episode and what Gigok had to say about the about the show?
I agreed with most of it. I think I agree with a lot of what Gigguk says, hence I follow him.
Oh
But
yeah.
yeah, it kind of ties into something we're going to talk about later, right? About
Right.
an anime being classified as a classic. Like Gigguk says that, or I think I'm pretty sure you mentioned that he thinks Kimetsu no Yaiba has a potential to become a classic. Um, we'll see about that, but
Yeah.
I think
I
at
mean,
least
We
in
can
shonen, it
define it
stands out.
later.
yeah, I think
Yeah,
so far how it's going, I agree with the sentiment there. It's on its way to being great, and the way it's like uh, defining new territory in shonen, I think is really cool. Like we're actually seeing more about like motives behind um, like the enemies that Tanjiro is taking on than you see in other shonens. Other shonens, there's a lot of throwaway characters with like no backstory. In this show, I really like how every character, including the daemons that are being slayed, have a lot of backstory to them, and they actually get a lot of they get a complete beginning, middle, and an end to what's going on in their lives and why they're a demon and why they needed to be slayed. So yeah,
yeah.
I think
I don't completely agree actually, because I think a lot of old anime goes into a lot of the antagonist's whole backstory, especially like even Naruto does it.
there were
Um,
some with Naruto, but only like the main villains. Like you think there's some characters like I can think back to like Sasori, who was one of the Akatsuki. He got like the
he had
his backstory was like about his parents died and he made puppets of his
yeah.
parents, and that's his whole backstory. And now he's evil. And
Well, he's I mean he's kind
they
of messed
they
up at the loss of his parents too.
they just didn't give like characters, you know, in shonen, they didn't give them as much attention as I feel like Demon Slayer is. In one episode they tell so much more about a single demon than like long form old shonen did with their characters, in my opinion.
I don't know if I agree with that one. Just because, like Naruto, for example, so like Sasori's
Naruto.
arcs, or other enemies that they had, other villains, if you can call them villains. They spent like a good 4 or 5, even 10 episodes just building up their backstory. Like uh, um,
I mean
Nagato, for example, that was an
Pain.
entire like 30 episodes, like Pain,
Yeah,
just like preparing everybody for
but that was one of the
who
more
he
main
was.
villains, and like I felt like some villains got like that special treatment, and that's what was missing from me from Naruto, is that there were other villains who didn't get the special treatment, like Nagato and like
Well,
why am I blanking on name starts with a ma the main
Madara?
Madara.
Madara, yes, yes.
Madara had like the longest
He
backstory
had
of
a
Yeah,
huge
anyone.
backstory.
so there's characters like that getting the, you know, the special
Well,
treatment, but like in Kimetsu no Yaiba, like everyone's getting equal treatment, and I like it.
to be fair, there's a lot of characters in Naruto. That's gonna
I
be
think
a hard life for the
I think
creator.
the difference is just time scales. So like Naruto went on forever, right? They had a lot of episodes to devote to characters, and they had a lot of characters. And on top of that, they had fillers. So they have villains inside of fillers that they probably only
Created
gave
just
them
for the
like
sake of the
five
filler.
minutes.
Hmm.
But Kimetsu no Yaiba isn't gonna have that because it's made in the modern day format of just like, here's 12 to 26 episodes. You're gonna tell the entire story now. So they tell everything as it is, and they don't really have fillers. So I feel like that's probably why.
Okay, yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, anime now can't really have as much fillers considering we're on that 12 episode format, and so I think everything's going to be more like following the actual. Most of the time, they follow the manga. There, Tokyo Ghoul didn't, even though it was also in that 12 episode format. So it really depends, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, like if your anime is gonna be short, I would really hate for there to be a filler. Like every anime has that like beach day, and I'm like, can this episode be something else?
The onsen episode.
Or yeah, the onsen episode.
The hot springs, you gotta have it. Okay.
All right.
Since we're getting into all this Naruto and stuff, we can officially introduce Apollomcnugget here. So tell us a little bit about yourself and your introduction to anime.
Yeah, tell us how. Yeah, specifically. Yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into the world of anime. Why you are who are you as an anime person, and how did you get there?
Um, who am I? Well, I'm Apollo or Apollomcnugget, I guess. Um, I got into anime in like 7th grade, so that was
You were probably like
12
12.
years ago.
Oh, so 12 years ago. Yeah.
I was.
Oh,
It was 12 years ago, so I was 15.
he's got he's got a
No,
funny backstory about
no,
anime
no,
though.
that's not 7th grade.
Yeah, I was gonna say if you're 15 in seventh grade,
Anime.
something's definitely
No, no,
wrong.
yeah, that's wrong.
Wait, what? That's okay. Well, you have a funny thing about when you were a
But
child.
you were a
Oh
young
no, no,
lad, a
the
young middle
17.
schooler lad.
Holy crap, man. When I was a young lad, so originally, I mean, I guess you can consider that I started watching anime when I was little with like Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh and all
Hmm.
the classic stuff that appeared on Toonami, right?
Right.
Or on WB Kids or Disney XD,
For
those
kids.
anime. Yeah, for
Disney XD didn't
kids. Oh
exist back then.
God. Oh yeah, yeah. Disney XD came later.
Yeah.
But yeah. So the funny story that Kamui is talking about, there was this craze back. It was probably like in 2000 or like 2001 or something.
Mhm.
No, no, it was after 2001. Can I? Because I saw the Pokemon 2000 movie. But anyway, I was super into Pokemon, like I loved it, and Yu-Gi-Oh too. And around that time, there was like rumors going around with like news networks that the Japanese had infiltrated our society and they were uh, trying to brainwash our children with their anime, um, like Pokemon. Like, have you ever seen that episode of South Park about Team
Yeah.
Pokemon?
I haven't seen
I
it, but I can believe that they would do something like that. Yeah.
I didn't know that was like a craze or like an actual like thing happening. I thought South Park was just like making it up.
No, no, it was a real thing. So like people actually believe that, and they were broadcasting it on like big networks um, like MSNBC and that kind of thing.
Hmm.
Um, so my mom saw the news one day and she saw that they're saying that these Pokemon cartoons are turning our children into Japanese soldiers, and she was like, "No, you're not gonna watch this anymore."
Oh
So
damn.
so yeah, yeah. So I wasn't allowed to watch any more Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh or play with that ever again. And then yeah, that was my experience with anime when I was little. But then
But then
He
there
was
had to be a turning
deprived.
moment where you got back into it. So
yeah,
where
yeah.
did you get back in, and what was this re-entry point for you, and how did you take off from there?
Okay. Um, in 7th grade. So I mean, when this happened, I was like in kindergarten or maybe first grade maybe. So then in 7th grade, a really good friend of mine started watching Naruto.
Hmm.
And she did it like as a joke because she had friends that were like either reading or watching Naruto, and she was kind of petty. Like we're not friends anymore, but anyway. Um,
Whoa.
but she
That's
started
a
watching
different
the
story.
so she started watching the show to basically make fun of these people, and then she made me watch the show, right?
What? Okay.
Right, right. But then she's ended up liking the show, and much faster than her, and I loved the show. So then I was like, "Oh, this is not bad." So it just like kept going from there. And then at one point, I was like, "What
Oh
about
my
other
god.
anime?" So the
That's
second
so like
series,
oh
yeah.
how the turntables.
Oh, um, so I was just like, "What other anime might be good?" And then that's when I found out about Death Note.
Hmm.
So Death Note was the second anime that I watched, like where I knew that it was anime, not like Dragon Ball Z, where I just watched it on Toonami
Hmm.
because it was there.
Yeah.
Um, and Death Note, I guess, is what made me get really into anime and just be like, okay, this is definitely like way better than anything that American cartoons are producing. So I just basically gave up on that and just only watched anime after that.
Nice. So then our follow-up question for you is, with all the years of accumulated anime knowledge and all of the repertoire you've gained, uh, what what would you say is your number one favorite anime, and why would you recommend it to the listeners of this podcast?
um, I don't think I can say I have one favorite anime. I'd say maybe three. Um,
Okay.
so one that a lot of people agree with is Neon Genesis Evangelion,
Of
or
Mhm.
course.
Evangelion, however you want to pronounce it. So that's a classic, and there's a lot of
Definitely.
reasons for why that's like I would think that that's probably one of the best anime of all time, and a lot of people would say that too. It laid the foundations for a lot of characters that there's been in anime since that show. Like the concept of a tsundere main female character
Oh
that
my
came from
god.
Evangelion.
Yeah.
Um, it also had actually very strong female characters, which was rare for anime or most
Hmm.
forms of media
Mm,
at that time.
debatable.
I didn't say it was the first one, but
Uh-huh.
all of the female characters in that show are strong characters, even if they're all broken. Um,
Yeah.
and um, I don't like mecha anime, which also kind of makes me wonder why that would be in my favorites.
Hmm.
Um, Neon Genesis doesn't really like it's a mecha anime, but it's not about mecha. It's
Right.
about all of the other things that are going on around it, like symbolism and a bunch of other stuff. Yeah, get in the robot. And actually, I have a Roomba, and we called it Shinji. So,
It's a good name.
Oh my
uh,
god.
and yeah, and it's also very mind blowing when you get to the end of it. Like, I mean, you could literally write a PhD thesis on the ending to that show. It's ridiculous.
I'm sure it exists out there somewhere. Someone's
I'm
probably
sure it
does
does.
some
Actually, I'm
type of
pretty sure.
anime major talking about literature major maybe talking about
Yeah,
the
no,
whole why it's, what it is.
I'm pretty sure I actually saw it. It was on Reddit. It's like a 32
No
page
way.
thesis. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Jeez.
On like all of the symbolism, like what it means, what the director wanted to say. Like it's a super deep story. Tons of Christian symbolism if you're into that. Um, and I mean, I feel like a lot of anime from that time was anyway. So yeah,
Second favorite
Evangelion
anime.
is definitely really good.
Okay.
Super recommend.
Did you?
Number two.
Second anime, I would I'd recommend Shinsekai Yori. That or the English translation of that would be From the New World. That's also a really good anime for very similar reasons. The show, well, the world building in that show is really good. It sets up a lot of the rules and uh, the setting of that universe in the first few episodes, and you don't really know where it's going. You think that it's kind of aimless, but things start um, kind of like coalescing
Hmm.
really well towards the end, and then you're like, oh, that's what this is about. And it happens actually really late into the show. Um, but you realize that every episode that you watched up until then was actually really important. So it makes the payout worth it.
You
And
think it's
there's
like a slow
also
build?
it so you think it's a slow build. Like, that's what I loved
That's
about
what I'm
the
asking
anime. It's
you.
like, yeah, it makes you think that it's a slow build, but when you're done with it, you're like, that was not a slow build. It was actually like
So it was
every
suddenly
single episode,
fast. Yeah.
it was actually fast.
Hmm.
And then if you rewatch it, you actually see a lot more things than you did the first time.
I see.
Um, So that's a really good one. And then the third would be Naruto, just because I followed that for like 11 years of my life. So yeah, that just has like a special place.
Now, here's the
And I mean,
hard-hitting question:
yeah,
Naruto, Naruto Shippuden, or Boruto? Which one's the best series?
Okay, that's
Shippuden.
not even comparable. What are you talking about?
Look, we just
Yeah,
had to
it's
check.
not
We just had
even
to
comparable.
check.
Yeah, I mean, with the
Is
original
it
Naruto, I count
isn't
it as part
Naruto
of.
the spin-off of Boruto, guys?
It's that anime about Boruto's dad.
What? Did you know there's a spin-off anime about Boruto's dad? Come on, guys.
Oh yeah, what's it called?
I think it's called Naruto.
Oh yeah,
It's some orange kid who just basically just fucks shit up, dude.
that's
Yeah,
true.
dude.
Oh gosh.
I mean, Shippuden is definitely better than Boruto. Boruto is kind of meh, but comparing Naruto and to Naruto Shippuden, I feel like you can't really do that because it's the same character and it's a direct continuation.
Uh-huh.
Like,
But I mean, there's
they
some
really could have just
there's some
kept the name
animes
as
where
Naruto.
like goes from series 1 to series 2, and series 1 was the better one. It's there's animes where it's like that.
Do you think it's possible for Boruto to be as like insane as Naruto? Just like the whole story and everything about it.
Yeah.
Or did
I
Naruto
mean,
already
it
do that
could. They
and it's hard to like
Naruto built
build it up
itself
to that level?
way too much. Yeah, Naruto built itself way too much. Like the beginning of Naruto didn't set a power limit, whereas Boruto
Mhm.
did set a power limit, and that is basically if it gets more ridiculous than that in Boruto, then you're just thinking that the creators are just going to milk this show forever.
So I
The,
haven't
the
watched I haven't watched Boruto yet, except for episode 1 because I'm not done with Shippuden yet. The power limit in Naruto Shippuden has already been broken a billion times. So
there's
like
there is no limit. What are you talking about?
for for Boruto, do they limit it back to where like the characters are less powerful than they were in Shippuden? Is that how they do it?
But doesn't
Well,
the son have to surpass the father?
I honestly don't know about that. So like one thing that they did in the movies of Naruto, like towards the end, like the last and
None of the
the Boruto
movies are good
movies,
in
like
Naruto. We all know.
well yeah, but the last is actually canon because it tells like
Yeah, it's
whatever.
true.
Anyway,
It's how they got
um,
together.
like after World War II, where all the countries of the world like decided to make the
Oh.
United Nations and like limit their power, like no more nuclear weapons and that kind of thing.
Mhm.
Um,
No more
after that,
tailed beast.
yeah, essentially that's what happens. They limit themselves. They're saying, okay, we're not never going to use the tailed beast again. That's just not what we're going to do it. And another thing that happens in Boruto is that they have technology, so
Well, that's true.
they harness jutsu into technology,
Ooh.
but that's
So
only
kids can try less. Naruto tried so hard because he had to do
exactly.
it. He's like the kid who's like, back in my day, he had to do it by hand.
Yeah, so they're not really coming up with like new things. They're just harnessing old things.
Mhm.
So that's another reason why I think it can't become more overpowered, like Naruto just kept breaking limits. And another reason is
The
that
power of
the
hard work.
maximum powered villains in Boruto are aliens, right? So it was like a novel idea in Shippuden to bring out the god of all ninja, but then in Boruto they basically just say that she's another one of like the many aliens out there. So I don't know. There's they could go the route of just like getting more and more powerful aliens, but then that's just going to turn into Dragon Ball Z.
Oh yeah, I
Oh
guess so.
gosh. How many times do you have to die, Goku?
Yeah.
Interesting. So yeah, some good show recommendations you got there, Apollo, I must say.
So we have a
Moving
big question for you, Apollo. So what makes anime great? What do
this is
you
a
think
question for
about
all three
that?
of us to discuss, not just Apollo. But yeah.
Yeah, but
What
he's starting it off.
All right, Apollo, start
I'm
us off.
starting. Um. Well, okay. Is the other question a follow up to this?
It is a follow up, yeah, but you can segue into it whenever you
Okay.
want.
Okay.
You can go into it whenever you want.
Well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, well, what makes an anime a great anime? I'd say is just like whether it's memorable, or like our characters identifiable. Like I can show you the back of Naruto, and pretty much anyone that knows anime would immediately be able to identify Naruto from his back.
Right.
But let's say, uh, what's an example? Um, uh,
Are you trying
What,
to think
like
of someone who's not memorable? 'Cause that's a really hard thing to
That's kind
do.
of the point.
Yeah.
I think
no. I mean, there's several. Okay, assassination classroom.
Uh-huh.
Just pick
Okay.
any one of the random children in there, not the
I've never
octopus
seen
dude.
it, but I
Um,
can imagine.
and look at them from their back. Are you going to be able to recognize them? No.
If it's
Yeah,
an
a lot
art
of people
style, I
watch the
might
show and they
notice
don't
it,
even
but
learn the name. Yeah,
yeah.
like I don't even know the name of the characters. I just remember what they look like, but it was nothing like unique. Angel Beats, for example, that's a good anime, but if you were to look at the characters from their backs, you won't like.
I think you would recognize them, but Angel Beats doesn't have characters that like they are good characters, like all of them are pretty good. But they're not so unique and like outstanding
I
that
see.
like,
Yeah,
sets them apart from every other anime character,
Yeah, I
I
that
mean
see.
the
makes
only
you want to remember them because everyone knows Naruto for who he is and
yeah
that loud kid in school.
yeah.
But Angel Beats, they're not as
Yeah, I
memorable.
just remember
Like you know
TK,
who they
dude.
are.
TK was lit in
Oh,
Angel Beats.
TK! I see. I forgot about TK, but he was hilarious.
Yeah, he was
Like
awesome.
Yeah, I'd say so.
I loved. I think his name was Oyama. He was like that kid who was like super like scared. He had no defining abilities. He was just so like normal and just like ordinary. And like there's this one episode where they're trying to like break like in the classroom but trying to be a bad student. He's like, I'm gonna be such a bad student, and he's like I'm gonna eat potato chips in class. Like I'm a hooligan, and that's why I loved him. But like yeah, so those they're not
So, what elements? So, besides the characters, what other elements need to go into an anime to make it great? So, like most people would argue for an anime to be considered great, like all of the elements have to come together. Like at least that's what I argue. So, it's got to have good art,
yeah.
it's got to have good music, it's got to have a good story, it has to have good characters. It has to have animation. All of the things have to come together. Um, what are things that can stand out in those categories to bring it to the top? What do you think?
I mean, I think how much anything that happens in the anime can relate to people. So, like, Pokemon as an example. Um, a lot of people know literally every single Pokemon name, right?
Hmm.
And why do you think that is, right? So Pokemon does a good job of like, you know, Pokemon games aside, whatever's in the anime, people would find a specific episode and they'd be like, "This one's my favorite because Blink and Blink Pokemon is my favorite." Well, why is it their favorite? So the fact that Pokemon manages to achieve um, many people having different favorite Pokemon, I think is pretty amazing because that means that every single episode had to be good to someone, not just everyone agrees that episode 19 is good, but episode like 14 was like meh.
I like that. Yeah, it can be special to everyone. I like that idea. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a,
Um,
that's an important one.
what are your thoughts, Kamui, about what in each of those categories can come together, or what would make those categories come together to make an anime great for you?
I mean, shouldn't at least each of those categories be outstanding to certain points so that like it all comes together to be like an at least like extraordinary anime
Yeah.
like as we were talking about like Demon Slayer earlier, we were saying it has the potential to be like an incredible anime, based off of the incredible art, and the story is pretty good, especially since they're like delving into like with more originality, as you said, like they're going into like every time they kill a demon, they're not just forgotten as a bad guy, you know? You're
Mhm.
always left with like the bittersweet kind of, I don't know if bittersweet's the right word, but you know, oh, we beat the bad guy, but oh wait, why are they trying to put us like put feels into, you know,
Yeah.
killing the bad guy? The bad guy. We're not gonna, you know, that's what I kind of like about anime. There's no like good, bad defining like hard black and white. It's everything's a little like gray area. There's no morality is always something that is
Yeah.
played with, that so that not everything is one thing. How do you say?
Yeah,
As
everyone
you said,
has like
black and
their
white.
motives, and they're like their motives aren't just based on good and evil. Their motives are based on very specific and real goals that they've set for themselves. So that's
And
something unique to anime. Yeah, that in Western culture you see more where like it is actually just straight up good versus evil. But I think in Eastern cultures, yeah, you do get
well,
more distinct.
I think they realized that they've been hitting that good versus evil too much, so they've been trying to be more original,
Yeah, that's true.
or more like, oh, they're not completely bad. They have a backstory, you know, just like how anime does that.
Hmm.
Like this is why they're bad. But so we're talking about episode 19, right, of Kimetsu no Yaiba. And I say, like, you're like that scene. Everyone talked about it on the internet. They're like, episode 19, whoa. And it's because I was watching, you know, that clip on again, and I was like, oh yeah, the art's extraordinary. Like, it has all these angles. He does like, you know, a new move that's like visually stunning, and
Hmm.
then it's the music, the mood that he gives, like it's got like that nostalgia about him remembering his father and the dance and everything.
Yeah,
Is that a spoiler? Shit.
yeah, it's a spoiler. It's fine. I was gonna say though, so yeah, that ties into what my answer for this question is pretty much for me to make an anime great is when all these different categories, these different pieces support each other really well. So like with the art and the music, you have like these two pieces that intermingle, like the timing is right, the animation's right. You get the music that delivers the message of the story because it's like telling the tale of his father, like you already said. And it's like it all just comes together in one moment and it's crazy. It's just crazy. And that's
It's
the stuff
crazy.
I love. Is when it's actually supportive, right? Because you have other animes where it's just art and music and story are just going through the motions. Everything has to have art and story and music.
Hmm.
But when they have the art and the story and the music intermingling and like they're actually coming together to deliver like a really strong message, that's the stuff that makes anime great for me. So like my one of my favorites is gonna be Mob Psycho. Mob Psycho is a show where like the art and the music, it's crazy. Like it
It's
just
crazy.
it it
That's true.
it's like creates heart pounding moments where it's like the characters are
It's
so like in such an intense struggle and like the art they do all this crazy stuff with the art where it's just like
It's well, what's actually great about the art, it's creative because
yeah, it's
it's his
super creative.
actual art style, and everyone knows the actual artist. Like his art style is chicken scratch. It's like awful. His art is not beautiful. It's ugly. The manga, at least, it's like not visually great at all. But his story is like compelling, and but like the anime made it fun. Like even though his art style was kind of like chicken scratch, literally, if you've seen it, like you know it's chicken scratch. But what's amazing about it is just because they took his art style and did crazy stuff with like the whole like the theme of him being a psychic, and they just put like all these random visuals like going into it, just so like so many colors and crazy visuals just to make that anime amazing for Mob
Yeah,
Psycho.
they just like try to go above and beyond with every point. Like they're trying to they're trying to get it they're trying to create something memorable. So it actually ties back to the point Apollo is making. Like they're using all these different strategies and all these different tactics to like make it memorable, so that it's not just the same old same old. Like they could have done those on such a lower level where the art was so so, the music was so so, and the story was there. Like they could have done it that, but they didn't. and that's what was like the good stuff about it.
There's certain series I'd like to talk about, like, you know how there's like soundtracks from anime that you're like, oh, it gives the theme, but you wouldn't really like listen to it outside of like, you know, just the anime, watching the anime. But then there's like certain anime where the soundtrack is original and great, and there's like certain anime have actually gotten awards for like their soundtrack. And I was thinking of K actually. K is actually really famous for their soundtrack. It's like really like it sets the a mood for the anime, of course, but it's like really chill. And it's kind of got like sometimes it's got those hip hop vibes, sometimes it's like crazy electronic because of like, you know, all of, like the theme of K is like, you know, they all have like special powers and stuff, so it really like builds up on their like abilities.
Mhm.
I don't know if you guys ever seen K, but it's also visually stunning. Like it's really beautiful, and the story is just
It's on my plan to
I
watch. Yeah,
oh really?
I haven't watched it yet.
I love K. There's a lot of K stuff. There's like 2 seasons of K. There's like 2 or 3 movies, and then there's like the whole I can't even call. What do you call it? You know how 3 movies is like a trilogy? It's 7 movies.
Yeah,
So yeah, there's a lot of stuff you gotta catch up on.
nice.
Yeah, the sound in K is pretty interesting. Like, I don't know how they do it, but just them walking has a soundtrack, and the soundtrack is cool. So I'm like, man,
Oh,
I
That's
want to
yeah,
watch
nice.
that.
yeah. You really no, and then you hear the soundtrack, and then you see a certain, and then you hear that soundtrack, and you're just broke. You're just like, no, why are you doing this to my heart? So it's just
Yeah.
Alrighty. Well, I will let Kamui take us into the next topic on our schedule for
oh,
tonight.
so I guess everyone's noticed the huge increase of CG in anime. Like we've seen full CG anime like Ajin, Berserk. There's actually a new movie coming out called Hello World, and I don't know. I looked up like, you know, I was doing a little research on like about computer graphics and or CGI, 3D CGI and anime, and it had like a lot of negative like you know how people just like write in forums or something, they're like, why does CGI suck, you know,
Yeah.
something like that. And I'm just like, I don't get why people think this way, because CGI, I've seen so many anime where CGI was used and it basically makes it better than like it could have been if it was just like 2D drawings. Like we were talking about Shingeki no Kyojin, right?
Mm.
I know people like Berserk was a huge thing about like how terrible it was, and I do agree that using full CGI anime, the whole like 3D, it needs more work because to me they lack expressions and
Yeah.
lack a little bit of fluid movements. But I didn't watch Shingeki no Kyojin completely, but we were both watching Vinland Saga and we're like, wow, this looks like the huge war scenes and like the use of like the big ships, you know, they're Vikings, so they got big Viking ships, and like the whole like fighting with their swords and all the axes and stuff, like they looked amazing with like being like 3D CG, you know.
Mm.
And but we all know about Golden Kamuy, the infamous bear. I don't know if you guys ever seen it, but if you ever want to just Google it right now, Golden Kamuy bear. Um, like it'll probably pop up. Like it's just infamous for being so out of place because you know it looks like a regular 2D anime, and then you got this bear that's just there that doesn't make sense.
Oh, it's a good looking bear.
So I think Apollo here could explain more about how like CG is in Shingeki no Kyojin, because I didn't fully watch it, but you can explain how it affected the anime to you.
Yeah. In Shingeki no Kyojin or Attack on Titan,
Oh yeah, that too.
the the CG is remarkable because it allows you know, the creative team to do a lot of stuff that they just wouldn't be able to do if they were hand drawing it. There's one really famous scene now that if you haven't seen it, you can look it up on YouTube. It's when Levi is being chased by, I don't want to
I
give
think he is
spoilers, but
chasing,
he's
right?
he's being chased by a character that
he's
you
being
you don't
chased
want to
by
you can't
a
know who this
character.
is
And
until you get to season 2. Yes.
Yeah. So basically, you guys in a chase scene, and the things that they are able to pull off in this chase scene are actually insane. It's almost as if they have a live person doing, motion tracking on a body, filming them, and having the camera do one continuous shot while it pans uh, location around the object it's looking at.
Hmm.
So what you end up getting is Levi doing some insane things, and you watch it as if you were in that chase scene with him. Um, and the amount of like visual clutter that happens um, would make it just straight up impossible to do if you were hand drawing it,
Yeah.
because uh, one of the things
Yeah.
that makes that scene stand out is that it's fluid. So,
Yeah.
let's say you're keeping track of like 20 bullets and 12 of those bullets are ricocheting off walls. If you're hand drawing this, you're not going to get an accurate image of that. And it would just, it would look like what anime has always looked like. But this CG scene makes it look like if it were real, but it's still anime. So it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, and to clarify a little bit of what Apollo's talking about, so Shingeki no Kyojin or Attack on Titan is this show where like the characters move around in this gear that shoots out
3D maneuver gear.
harpoons. The 3D
Harpoon.
maneuver gear shoots out
Harpoons.
harpoons, sticks into buildings, and then they zoom zip through the buildings, and they do all these crazy movements, and they animate it with CGI to get this really cool effect in this scene that Apollo's talking about.
I'm
And he does some insane stuff that you wouldn't be able to achieve it with like just regular hand-drawn animation, because like this stuff is like unimaginable for just 2D animation. Like,
so I'd say like yeah, when they do the like how they have their swords, the way they like spin and do all these crazy like leaps with their 3D maneuver gear, with their kind of like grappling hooks in a way slash harpoons sticking into letting you grapple all the way. But yeah, like they do insane like camera perspectives that like it's hard to like plan out all the camera perspectives from like if you're gonna hand draw the whole anime. But they look really good on like the gear that they use, so that you can have like very interesting and dynamic perspectives of when they're like fluid movements moving across like the whole like city or whatever that they're doing.
yeah, they do
But
some
I actually
interesting stuff for sure. We are low on time though, so let's hop into our next topic. The topic is what makes an anime a classic. So we talked before about what makes anime great, but the definition of something that's a classic is something that's completely different. I'll let Apollo go first because he speaks extensively on this subject. He's an expert on what makes an anime a classic, so we'll hear from him first.
Okay. Um,
I guess
so what makes an anime classic, I think that there's two categories to what would make an anime a classic. You got the fact that everyone just has seen this anime or everyone knows about it, so because so many people know about it, it's a classic. um, and then the other category would be um, a classic defined by like the traditional like literary form of like what is a classic piece of book, art, music, that kind of thing. Um, and that one's the more interesting one, in my opinion, because let's say someone says the One Punch Man season one is a classic. Well, I would say that the only way for that to be called a classic is because everyone loved it. Um,
everyone did.
but yeah, everyone did. But then if I say, okay, well, can you compare it to Neon Genesis Evangelion? And in my opinion, you couldn't, because that anime is considered a classic for very different reasons. The animation in One Punch Man is amazing. It's visually stunning. So many things are happening at once in some scenes. In Evangelion, you have like a 3-minute scene where you have two characters just like staring at each other and like talking, and only their mouth is moving. So you have the fact that you can compare One Punch Man to that and say that they're both on the level of classic is um you have to be looking at like what the definition of the classic is. So
Yeah.
um if the so like let's go to the side of like not just everyone loves it. I think that in order for an anime to achieve that actual classic status, it would have to have, you know, memorable music. So like either an original soundtrack or a soundtrack that just pairs so well with the anime that it gives it identity. So like Psycho Pass has music that if you heard it, you'd be immediately reminded of Psycho Pass. Or Pokemon, you hear that the soundtrack to Pokemon, you immediately know that it's Pokemon. Or Naruto, you hear any of the ambient music that they play in that show, and you know that it's a Naruto song. Um,
It's true.
uh, art, um, I feel like goes isn't as important for this kind of classic status. As long as it's not chicken scratch, then I think
Mm.
it passes. Because
This is why One Punch Man isn't a classic
yeah,
chicken scratch.
see, exactly. So, like for example, Case Closed. The art in Case Closed isn't amazing, but
Oh,
it's a
it's
classic,
so
right?
old school. It is so old
Exactly.
school. I
But
would.
then you have art like whatever the latest Studio Trigger anime is. It's an amazing anime, but um, I wouldn't compare it to something like Case Closed that you know millions of people would say that they grew up on and they feel nostalgic about. Um, and then uh, what we were mentioning before about just how the anime can relate to people, and then you mentioned what kind of message it wants to give out. So yeah.
I mean, what are some old classics that we were talking about, like Sailor Moon, Naruto? Would you say the big three are classics? Even Bleach, even though Bleach kind of like pooped itself. Would
Well,
you say Bleach is a classic?
I think so because what they want to deliver a story and messages throughout
Would you
that
say that
story, and
they're
they
genre defining?
have yes, because a lot of what they did, people still do. And they haven't come up with very new formulas up until like very recently, right? Um, and that goes into these anime being timeless, right? So like one of the literary definitions of a classic is that it has to be timeless. Um, so you don't care that you're watching this anime that's set in 1940 because they needed that setting in order to achieve their message, and you watch it for the message, not because of the setting. Like, um, isekais are the complete opposite of that, where they want to give you a fantasy world and they don't care about ever actually giving you good content. Um,
Hmm.
some are good. Some are
That's an unfortunate
That's an
that's an
iffy.
unfortunate way to
no,
frame the
no. Some are good.
isekai
Like
genre.
ReZero does a good job of it. The original Sword Art Online did a lot to do that genre defining um,
So Sword Art
isekai.
Online defined the isekai. Like isekais actually always existed, but we never really were like, oh yeah, we love isekai anime. It wasn't like a actual term that we used until like now, sort of,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm. And
Well, what were some modern isekais then that we wanna that you think are?
One
well, I
that
think
came out pretty recently that hit a lot of
Which one?
people's funny bone the right way was uh, Rise of the Shield Hero. A lot of people were a big fan of that show, and
That's
also
true.
the that time I was reincarnated as a slime. That anime also came out recently and has been big in isekai as well.
yeah. So those two ones are good examples of like so Shield Hero does a lot to try new things and define the genre again
Yeah,
because they did a thing where the main character is not only underpowered because that happens in pretty much all the isekais, but he's hated on top of that. So that gives him a lot of trouble, which
which
forces him to do things that other heroes would never do. Like
yeah,
um
which is
I
something
don't want to give spoilers.
not only not in isekai, like not in anime at all. You rarely see an anime where just the main character is so hated on, and that's like a defining point of the series that like everyone hates them, and they have to overcome this low status they've been given.
And what stands out the most isn't that they're overcoming this hate. It's that they don't go. They're not the traditional, like, white knight hero that overcomes it because of willpower. Like, he actually goes and does some dark things in order to do it. Like, he doesn't care if people continue hating him the entire time. He just does what he needs to do, right? So that's pretty interesting. Now the slime anime, that is another anime that tried to do something new, where it focuses a lot on comedy. Of course, it's a slime.
Yeah.
But he's not how do you say, a person in the their isekai world, whatever game world that he's in, right? Is that what makes him completely different?
Right. He didn't come back to life as a human. He came back to life as a slime. Exactly.
Basically, he's like the grunt like the grunt like enemy, and like it's like the Zubats in the cave for Pokemon,
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Like you're in a cave and you hate those Zubats. You're like, I'm so done being in this cave. That's basically what he is. You're taking on their perspective, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, going back to the topic though and wrapping up on it, yeah, anime. I agree pretty thoroughly with Apollo's points. I can't disagree with it. It's like one of two ways you become a classic. You either become a classic through being so talked about, everyone agrees that you're a classic, or the other one, which is you are so genre defining, or you've brought something new to the world of anime that you are a classic in that format. So those are the two ways I would completely agree with that. Did you have any other final thoughts on it, Kamui, about it?
Nope, you hit it all.
We hit it all. Awesome. So that moves us into our second to last segment of the show, the weekly character war segment. Now, for this week, what the three of us did was we picked our favorite character from an anime that we consider a classic. So we will be describing our character and saying why they are the best, and also why their anime, in this case we may say, why their anime is so much more classic than the other characters.
Well, I wouldn't say more classic. I'd say why they are.
Yeah, that's fine too. So I'll start off. My character that I picked this week in the anime that she is from is I picked Fuko from Clannad and Clannad After Story. She is a very heartwarming character, and she is a character from the first arc. So the character Tomoya, who is the main character, goes through this series of arcs where he's helping out people with a variety of problems. Fuko is the first girl he encounters at this school he's going to, and helps her out first. She has like this weird shyness and wants to make friends by giving them starfish that she handcrafted herself. She's very cute and adorable, and like she's just really funny. I like this character a lot, you know. There's not much to say, but Clannad and Clannad After Story, the reason I would say they are a classic anime, they brought a lot into the world of just high school anime, where it's like this, it's something rare you see in anime. They follow the lives of these characters from high school into adulthood, and you follow their children. So something Naruto does, but it's basically one of the only other series that does this on this level. But Clannad does it really well for me. They follow these characters and shows the lifespan of them, and it has some comedic moments and it has some serious moments, and it ties them together really well, I think. So this show is a show that I gave a 10 out of 10 to After Story. So yeah, I think it's a classic because I believe this was around like 2006 just or sometime around then when it was released, and it's just doing stuff that you didn't see yet, and now you see other enemies that follow after Clannad and want to do the same kind of things, tell the same sort of stories in high school settings. Who would like to go second?
I can go.
Alright.
So, this is a classic anime. I don't know if everyone. It's pretty popular on my anime list, so I hope everyone knows Gintama. So Gintama is a pretty popular shonen anime, but I'd say it's probably my number one comedy anime because I think it's like the only anime, one of the very few anime that's ever made me laugh out loud. Like, a lot of comedy anime are kind of like chuckle. You're like, That's funny. But then like Gintama is hilarious. I love him. And so Sakata Gintoki, he's the main character, and he's always number one on the character polls, and he was also considered number one husband somewhere, I think. For like some shonen polls, I guess, that they did on their magazine. But
Yeah.
he's such a great character because he's so funny, and he's also like, even though he's always the whole anime is just hilarious in general, and he's just kind of like funny because he's kind of the fool, but also sometimes he's like the straight man who tells. That's like classic Japanese comedy where you got that guy who just tells them like what they're doing is stupid, and he's like being like the serious one. So he's like both of those, but he's also like incredible because he's a samurai, so he's like really, it's we love watching him fight. And but the thing is that he has a sweet tooth. He's so cute. But it's just a really great anime just because like even though it's very serious, there's so many, the author puts in like a lot of metaphors that makes like the whole story and everything very deep. So he's also a deep character, even though he, has that surface of just being the fool. Just a funny guy. He's like, a somewhat sad backstory. He's more serious than he comes off as.
Mhm.
So that's why I really love him. He's just a really dynamic character.
Yeah. All right, Apollo, hit us with your number one classic character.
I'm gonna be basic. Mine's Naruto. Yeah.
So
So,
basic.
I mean, he appealed to me a lot growing up just because I mean, I feel like he appeals to a lot of people, or at least him or one of the main characters in the show. Um, it's the traditional underdog character, and nobody believes in him, and the only way for him to feel like he's an important person or that he's worth his own existence is to become more powerful, so that eventually people will acknowledge him. And what I like the most about him, I guess, isn't just that he grew to be, god level ninja, is that the entire time it seemed like he almost didn't care how powerful he was getting. Other characters actually acknowledge their strength, but he kind of never does. He just continues to grow, and what he focuses more on is his connections with people. And another thing that stands out in that show is that he literally forgives everyone. He turns all the bad people into good people, and a main character or hero that can essentially see all of the sides to a situation or a person. I think that's really cool because that's how real life is. Like, are there really heroes and villains in real life? No. Um, I mean, you're, there's like, normal people and terrorists or murderers, but
Okay, we're not gonna go into that.
that doesn't.
Woo!
But that doesn't count really. So yeah, he
We're
stands
not
out for
gonna.
that.
I got you. Nice. Well, we are running out of time. I think we did a good job of doing our characters justice on introducing why they're cool and what classic anime they came from. So let's move into our final segment, which is the weekly Q&A. We'll take questions from the chat. Chat, it's now your time to ask us the hard-hitting questions, the hardest hitting questions about the world of anime that you want the answers to. We are the experts, and we're here to answer them. First, I would like to pull a question that was shared recently in chat by PrettyMTG. He asked, what are some good starter animes to get into the world of weebdom? He asked a little while ago in chat. My recommendations are Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood is a really good one to start into. It's a bit longer, so if longer is something you're avoiding, don't go for this one. But it's about 52 episodes long or 56 episodes or something, and it's a very general anime that covers a lot of it covers a lot of the things that like you're gonna find in other animes. It's gonna lead you into the world of anime to like soften, like, I don't know what the right wording is, but it's gonna get you ready for the world of anime. Another one that I would recommend is the show I just talked about, which is Clannad. It's a classic from within the last 2 decades, so you're not going super far back for a classic, but it's a show that touches on a lot of really has a lot of really good comedic points and a lot of serious points, and it shows you like the two different realms or two of the different realms that anime can like lead into and how they can really kill it in those areas. So those are my two. What do y'all think are some good starter animes that a newfound weeb can get into?
Definitely. I think everyone's seen One Punch Man. That's actually very basic. That was a weird time when One Punch Man came out. Anime became kind of like basic, but like kind of like cool in a way because people were like, "Whoa, have you seen One Punch Man? It's such a
Mhm.
cool anime. It's so good." And I'm like, "Whoa, this is weird." Like even normies are
Right?
watching it.
Right.
But also that also includes Attack on Titan. Even like people who weren't really into anime that much were like, "Oh, Attack on Titan's so cool." And I was like, "Whoa, anime is becoming cool for some reason." you know?
All right, so those are
So
y'all's two recommendations. Did you have any, or your recommendations rather? That's mine and Kamui's recommendations. Apollo, did you have any recommendations from yourself?
I say those are some like pretty
Um,
intense anime. So if you're looking for lighthearted ones, I would have to think about it actually.
well, I mean, it depends. Like, are you just trying to watch anime to just watch an anime, or do you want to get into it? Because so like
Provide us one of each.
FMA, FMA is definitely a good one to watch. Attack on Titan, One Punch Man, those will get you into anime. I feel like Clannad is a good like anime to like solidify liking anime because the other shows focus a lot on like action and other stuff like that, but Clannad gets into the emotional stuff. So um, I feel those recommendations are pretty good.
All right.
Well,
Do we?
I we can make a list of all the animes that we mentioned today, or I can also link my anime list. I'll link it like right here in the comments.
Okay.
Wanna like check that out, guys?
And mine can be found below stream as well for anyone who's watching
Mhm.
live. If anyone wants to check out my enemy list. Do we have any other questions from the chat? The hard hitting questions about the world of anime before we close out today. We'll wait for just a little bit longer to see if anyone has some more questions. Um,
I was also thinking, did I? I didn't say Death Note, did I? I was thinking in my head, actually. Yeah.
Death
So
Note's another good
pretty
recommendation
MTG.
anime.
Yeah. It is pretty basic, but I mean that's also a good one to get into.
All
I mean,
right.
I'm gonna say it's that
All right,
basic.
we have another question coming in from chat. We have Apollomcnugget in chat asking if two tsunderes love each other, will they ever find out? That's a good question. There's a show slash manga that is experimenting with the idea called Kaguya-sama Love is War. I just watched the first season of it that aired recently. And yes, it involves two tsunderes who are in love with each other, and they haven't yet found out after a while. But it's an ongoing
Of
manga,
course.
so maybe eventually. The experiments are underway.
Perfect.
um, this question for I think this is a Dragon Ball reference. I am not as familiar with it, but the question from Pretty MTG in the chat is Muten Roshi a good person or a creep? Kamui, are you familiar with? Would you be able to answer this question?
Master Roshi, dude, it's been so long since I've seen Dragon Ball Z or whatever, but he's a great person, isn't he? Even though he likes, you know, some men has their thing that they like, that's a little I don't know, is he creepy?
I mean, he
Maybe
was
a
the
little
turbo
bit, but
shop.
he's a little creepy, I'd say, but he has good intentions. Well, maybe not towards that side, but the other side.
Gotcha. Well, alrighty, we've gone over by a little bit of time. I think we will wrap up here. If anyone has any more hard-hitting questions for us, be ready to ask us next week. So next week's episode will be hosted over on the Kamui underscore OW Twitch channel. catch us live there for the next one. Thank you all for watching today. Thank you, Apollo, for joining us on stream. And thank you, Kamui, for being here as usual. Thank you, Andy, for being here and hosting as well.
Thanks,
all right.
Andy.
Yeah. And yeah, does anyone have any more final thoughts? I believe we'll see you guys all in the next one.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye, friends.